Welcome to the Phantom Zone.
In this week's episodes versus Crimson, Lois gets Red Kryptonite high and accidentally date drugs Clark just in time to ruin Lana and Lex's engagement party. Then, in our second episode, Trespass, Lana has a stalker again and tries to learn more about Clark. This is the SMALLVILLE Chronicles. Hello, we are back after a pretty long break. Schedules, coronavirus, everything is crazy. But we're back and we're talking about a couple of episodes in season 6. And we are almost halfway through the season. I'm joined, as always, by Alan Muir.
I'm really glad to be back doing this.
Yeah. I know we left off a while ago, but basically this is the season where Lana and Lex have been they're getting married. They're in this kind of alliance. Lana's pregnant, quote unquote. Lex is basically at the tipping point of becoming pure evil. Lois is she's not main cast yet, but she's this is kind of right before she's an every episode player. And I'm trying to think, that's kind of the big things in this season. This is kind of the last season, I think, until everything goes really starts going off the rails, when we start getting into the zoners and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which we have the zoners in this season, but it goes after that, it's just Bizarro stuff and everything going there gets insane. So our first episode is Crimson. It's a pretty straightforward episode, except it has the weirdest setup.
I felt uncomfortable watching this episode.
Yeah, so Chloe and Clark go to the Talon. There's a big Valentine's Day party. Jimmy shows up with Lois, who's so upset over breaking up with Oliver. Chloe realized Jimmy brought Lois because he's trying to set her up with Clark, which is very funny, especially where the show had been at this point. Jimmy and Chloe leave Lois and Clark, who realize they've been set up, and Clark's just okay, I'm out of here. And Lois goes over to a vendor run by Star, who's I don't know, a hippie chick, she's a mystic, and she's selling novelties and snake oil kind of person and fortune telling. So she guesses Lois is heartbroken, and she's oh, here's a lipstick. If you put it on, you'll fall in love with the first man you see. But she does, and we see the CG effects that it's red meteorite. Red Kryptonite in the lipstick. So Lois puts it on, and she sees Clark in the mirror. Oh my god, that was so deceiving. In the mirror behind her. Apparently, and then becomes smitten. So she gets she roofies herself. I don't know. It's more she gets ecstasy, I guess, or dose basically, and she's just horny for Clark. Which there's it's one of my problems with the end of this episode, but it's basically she drugs herself accidentally, and then as we go through, she ends up drugging Clark. So the next morning, Lois goes to the Kent house in a leather jacket, knee-high boots. She's all sexed up, and she tells Clark that she's over Oliver because she realizes she's in love with him. Clark's what's going on? And she gives him a mixtape in the form of a CD, which is really funny. And Clark knows she's acting strange, and as she's oh, let's go dancing, and then he super speeds away when she turns it, which just is funny.
The effect of when he super speeds away, it looks like you expect him to be going to the other side of the planet.
So, and we cut to Chloe's leaving work and finds Lana at her door. She realizes she left things in a weird place the last time they talked, and she'll quit asking Chloe about Clark's secret, and Chloe admits that he has one, and she also asks Chloe to be her maid of honor, which Chloe agrees, which who else would it be? There's 6 people in the show. Later, Lana and Lex are getting ready for their engagement dinner. Lex shows her how he's made his room into an elaborate nursery for the baby, and he wants to announce Lana's pregnancy, but Lana's no. She doesn't want to tell everyone, she doesn't want everybody to think that that's why they're getting married. And Lex is kind of feels maybe she just doesn't want to marry him. Which, at the Daily Planet, Clark tells Chloe that Lois is acting weird, and Chloe doesn't believe her until Lois shows up, and Lois then shows that she got a tattoo with like a heart, like it's really badly made up, but it's like a heart that says Lois and Clark forever, and Chloe's like, okay, what's going on? And Lois drags Clark into a phone booth and then gives him a kiss. So now that, because it's Red Kryptonite, he basically becomes like the Cal persona, which is basically douchebag Clark. So, and then they just like make out hardcore, which I feel like they're like hand waving a bunch of stuff because they're at this point, Clark would Cal as or Clark as Cal even care about like revealing stuff? I don't remember if he was like super caring about hiding his abilities.
No, Red or Cal is inhibitionless.
Yeah. What I do think is funny is the callback when she's like, "Oh my God, you're the Green Arrow because I kissed you before," and then he's like, "Yeah, no, I was just." He's like, "No, I just dressed as a Green Arrow because so she wouldn't know it was Oliver." Which then she starts talking about Oliver, and then Cal's like, "Oh, I'm miles ahead of him," and starts doing like jumping from leaping over tall buildings in a single bound to Queen Tower. So Lois is like, oh, and they break into the Queen Tower. They break into the Queen Tower, and like they make out in the on the couch, which is only interrupted when he sees that there's an invitation to Oliver for Lex and Lana's engagement dinner, and he's like, "Ooh, let's crash it." So Chloe's on the way to the party. Jimmy shows up. He brought her flowers for Valentine's Day, and he's like, "You know, you're dragging your feet about getting to the party." And Chloe's like, "No, I'm not." It's like, you know, I'm trying to figure out why Lois is acting weird. And Jimmy's like, no, they just have really good chemistry. And I just think that you're jealous because, like, you still have feelings for Clark. Chloe's like, no, and you shouldn't bring that stuff up because it's not real. And then kind of tells him to go away. But they go to, Chloe goes to the party, and then Jimmy visits the Mystic and asks her for an antidote, which how they get to, like, figure out her is, like, kind of hand-wavy, too. It's like, oh, and what she gives him is basically like kryptonite perfume, I guess. Like it's a little spray.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily, or they don't really. There's just like a one and done.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Mystic, like you don't see her ever again. She's just there to serve the plot purpose.
Mm-hmm. So now we get to the weird stuff where, so Cal shows up to the mansion with Lois, and they crash a dinner party, and then he basically like shits on everybody. He just like goes roast mode and like flips out about Lionel and his mom's relationship. Chloe must be happy that Lana's getting married because now that she like finally has a chance to get with him since Lana's gone. Lex tells him to leave, but Cal tells him to get the hell back. And then Lex gets in his face, and then he he then throws Lex like a rattle and saying a toast to baby Luther, basically like letting everybody know that that's the reason Lana's marrying Lex. And Lex like flips out. Cal chucks him to the side. Lana takes his arm and drags him like away from him. Martha realizes that like something's going on, that he's been infected, and that's when Jimmy arrives and sprays Lois. And Martha goes after Clark, and Lois is like all weirded out and like heartbroken, and Chloe and Jimmy cure her with the spray, and basically she completely has no memory of anything.
Yeah, I think it's Jimmy that makes a comment about it's just weird seeing her act like it's so weird seeing her act like such a girl.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, Cal takes Lana to the bar and tells her that they must still be in love and she should marry him instead. And Lana's upset that he like embarrassed her, and she denies it. And then he kisses her, and she kisses him back. And Lana tells him that he doesn't love her, but he can't stand to see her love anybody else. And then Lex arrives. Lana runs into his arm. Cal's like, "You just wanted what I had. Lana's just a trophy. And that you're nothing but a consolation prize." And then Cal asks Lana to say she doesn't love him, and Lex looks at her, and she doesn't deny that like she still loves Clark. And then like Cal basically starts walking out. Lex pulls out a gun. He's like, "Stay back." Lana's scared and like it's like, "Why the hell do you have a gun?" In this situation, it's kind of like unnecessary. And then like Cal like is like, "Yeah, what are you gonna do? Like shoot me? Go ahead." and he grabs it, like he basically like choke slams him and like chokes him out. And that, you know, if he had known who Lex is destined to be, he never would have rescued him from that bridge all those years ago, which I do think is a cool line.
Yeah, it's a great, like, screw you, to hell with you.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so Cal is choking out Lex, and Lana's trying to get him off, but he's obviously way too strong. And Lex grabs like a chisel in the barn and then tries to stab him. And Cal crumbles to the ground in pain, and Martha shows up. She's like, "You guys need to leave." But Lana notices the chisel on the ground, which is bent. And Martha reveals that she has like kryptonite with her, and that's why he's in pain. But like it restores Clark to normal. And so this is where like I'm kind of annoyed at the plot, because they obviously explain to everyone that Lois was under the influence of something. Why couldn't they say the same thing about Clark?
Yeah,
it's one of
the, like he the thing that really got to me was the comment he made about Jonathan saying Dad's been in the ground for what, a year, and you're already trying to be a Luther.
Yeah, like you would think that like that's how they could like, oh, like Lois got this like lipstick, and then when she kissed Clark, it transferred to him, and like there's enough crazy stuff, but like they just don't go. They like act like Clark was just like in his own faculties, which is so weird. So basically, Clark has to like deal with everything that happened as Cal, which is again weird because Lois doesn't. And basically, Martha's like, yeah, but the problem is like when you're on Red K, you say everything. Like you stop putting it, like your walls come down, and everything you bottle up comes out. So like everything you said is how you actually feel. And he's like, yeah, I can't let Lana marry Lex. And Martha's basically like, you gotta let go, like it's over. And then Lois arrives, and she doesn't remember anything, which is good for them. But she's uncomfortable with like not knowing. And Clark is like, yeah, we kind of like, there were some things, and they kind of have a banter back and forth. And he shows her the mixtape, and she's like, oh my god, this is like terrible. And then Chloe thanks Jimmy for helping her like save Lois. And she's, you know, like how good they work together. And Jimmy's like, you're just gonna like say that like it's okay that Clark did all that stuff. And it's like it's so, I don't understand why they just like act like Clark was. It's like, okay, they know Lois was drugged. Why can't they just like be like, well, he was obviously drugged too? And basically, Jimmy gives her an ultimatum. Chloe's like, I really do like you, but he doesn't believe her, and he's like, we should take a break. And then Chloe cries. This is where we go back, and Lex talks to the doctor, and he's like, she's good. It's like, Lana was like, Lex is like, oh, Lana kissed Clark. And Lana's like, were you actually going to shoot Clark to protect me, or was it because you wanted to hurt him? And he's like, I felt like I had the right to go after Clark. He says doesn't know what he would do if he lost Lana. Again, tying back to the Christmas episode with Lexmas. And, you know, the doctor says, like, oh, Lana's pregnancy isn't typical, but it's progressing as scheduled. And then we reveal Lana has the chisel in her room. So she's starting to learn the truth, which just chisel becomes like I guess like a MacGuffin. I don't know what you would call it. Not MacGuffin. It's like a Chekhov's gun, I guess. It gets brought up again with like in a couple episodes. But that's this episode. It has some really like, it's a fun episode in the comedy, but there's so many bad plot holes in it, especially with like how they end it and wrap it up. I don't know. It's a fine episode. I'd probably give it I would not care to show this to anybody.
Yeah, I'd give this a D, because the only good thing about it is Tom Welling's ability to go from like Superman and then go from that to like a crazed maniac.
Yeah, it's goofy. So our second episode is Trespass, which is basically like the 7th time we get one of these like thriller episodes. Like I feel like we've had so many of them. It's like basically whenever they have like one of the female actresses is like the lead of the episode, this is what they get, which is like they're being chased after by like a serial killer-esque stalker. So yeah, we basically open up right where we left off in this, and Lana's checking out the bent chisel, but then she gets a photograph, like she gets a cell phone picture that's super tiny, and it's of her in the bedroom. And she's like, Lex, someone was in the room, and they sent security. But she doesn't show him the photograph and hides the chisel. And Lex says it's just like, you're just kind of freaking out from the paparazzi. I have to go out on business, but Lana's like, yeah, I'm going to go stay with Chloe just in case, and they send the security guards with them. Lana shows Chloe the cell phone photo, but doesn't talk about the chisel. Later on, Martha and Clark are doing some chores, and she has to go to a charity function in Metropolis, and why ask Clark, why aren't you finished yet? And Clark's like, I know I'm being watched, so I can't use my powers, so they're taking me all day. He's basically inferring, it's like weird. It's both that like he thinks he's being stalked, but also that there could be paparazzi because he's Luther's fiance's other man.
Yeah, and I also think it's inferred that the events of the previous episode put him very high on the paparazzi's list.
Mm-hmm. So Chloe arrives and reports that the photo was sent from a number that belongs to a low-level paparazzi, and Olsen can help Clark find it. Clark's like, why didn't you just ask him herself? And she admits that Chloe tells Clark that her and Jimmy broke up because she's his secret keeper. Clark feels bad, but Chloe's like, basically like has the photograph of the chisel. She warns him that Lana's like really close to finding out a secret. Lana's looking at Chloe's computer, clicks on the file marked CK, but it's password protected. Then she thinks she hears a noise and goes around, and she finds a present with a negligee. It reads, I want you to wear this, ... when I kill you. She tries to run, but there's a paparazzi outside. The head of security, Brady, escorts her back to the apartment just as Chloe arrives home, escorted by Mac. And Mac's the guy that's been in like all the episodes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I'm trying to see. Mac has been in, who's this actor? He looks super familiar to me. John Belfi, if I'm correct. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He plays one of the shitty, agents in Entourage, and that's why I know his face. And he's also in Grey's Anatomy. So Clark goes to the Daily Planet, talks to Jimmy, Jimmy's like, I won't stand in the way of you and Chloe's relationship. And Clark's like, what relationship? We're just friends. And maybe you should reconsider dumping her. And it's like, oh, we need to find the paparazzi, Luis Esposito. Lex sees Lana's encounter. He's like with the paparazzi, and he's pissed. He gives Brady an earful and tells him to take Lana to the Court Plaza. And Lana's like, that's the first place to stalk her. I don't think I'm going to go. We need to go to the last place. Bum, bum, bum. It's the Kent farm. And they secure the farm and the barn house because, paparazzi wouldn't definitely look at her at like the second place she'd go to. But this is when she's in the barn. She finds her old necklace, which I didn't even know Clark still had. I thought he had given it back to her at some point. I feel like he left it. Maybe he got it back again at some point. I don't remember. But it's neutralized. So she's like, oh, it's weird. So then she gets a call, and it's like a distorted voice. Tells her she can't hide, and there's a puddle of blood seeping under the door. Brady doesn't answer, and she opens the door, and he's on the floor with his throat slashed. He's barely alive. He grabs her ankle. Lana freaks out. She falls down the stairs. She wakes up in the hospital, and Dr. Langston says that Lana and the baby are fine, and that tells Mac that they can put her in the old wing of the hospital to secure her. And then he sedates her. Because old wings of hospital are always the best way to go. So Clark and Jimmy talk to Esposito, and they locate the files, and Clark realized that Esposito has like dozens of photographs on Lana snooping around at his barn, and he gets a call from his mom, says that Lana's in the hospital, he should check on her. And Lana wakes up alone in like this abandoned wing at the hospital. When her phone rings, it's Chloe. But while they're doing that, Esposito shows up and chases Lana down, shooting pictures the entire time. Clark arrives and chucks him across the room. And Mac finally shows up and carts him away. And then Clark, when they hear a gunshot, and Mac claims that Espinosa had a hidden weapon and that he had no choice but to shoot him. Yeah, okay, sure. They think the ordeal is over. Mac takes Lana back to the mansion and tells her that Lex's flight was delayed because of weather. Lana's like, thank you for protecting me. And Mac's like, oh, Lex shouldn't have left you alone. I wouldn't have left you alone. And Lana asked him to have the staff bring her something to eat. He's like, oh, we sent all the staff home and the rest of the security home so they wouldn't get caught in the snowstorm. And Lana's like, oh, that's what you would do because you're so good and kind, unlike all of Lex's past girlfriends. Lana's like, okay. And he reveals that, I've been watching you every day. And this is where Lana's like, oh shit, he's the stalker. And she gets him, like, his trust. And she didn't know what she was getting into, Lex. And Max goes to comfort her. And she smashes him in the head and runs away. She tries to call for help, but Max got all the phone lines. And then she breaks into the bedroom and she jumps out the window. And they're studying all of Esposito's files on Lana. When they see a photograph taken at the charity function that Martha attended, they realize that if Esposito was at the ball, he couldn't have been at the Luther mansion that evening. So he couldn't be the stalker. So Lana and Mac are fighting on the roof, and so snowy, and they fall through the skylight. Mac falls and dies, but Clark is there, and he catches Lana in his arms. And Lana's she's like, whoa, and like, how did he do it? And Clark just kind of stone faces her. She asks, why after everything are you still watching over me? And Clark says that maybe it's for the same reason she's been watching him. So the next day, Clark and Chloe, what they should do about Lana's investigation into them. Or Clark asks Chloe. Chloe's like, she risked her life to keep that photograph and the chisel away from Lex. That proves that she's loyal to you. Jimmy's annoyed at Clark for leaving him alone at Esposito's to get caught. Clark thanks him for helping out and then dips out again so they can have time to talk. And Jimmy's like, Clark's not so bad. And Chloe replies, but he's no Jimmy Olsen. And they kiss and make up. Rick shows up and reunites with Lana. He asks about hiding out the Kents, but she defends her actions, saying that like she has to trust her instincts. And Lex says he trusts her, but when she goes to check her drawer, the bent chisel's gone. So Lex approaches Clark in the barn, and he brings up the fight at the engagement party, and he can't understand why Lana still cares about him, but he still gives him an invitation to the wedding. And he says Lana wants him to come, and he wants to see what, Lex wants Clark to see what he's lost. And that's where we end. Which is also a really good line for Rosenbaum.
Yeah.
So this is it's a weird episode, but it does a ton of building for all these relationships. So even though this villain is goofy, we get to know a lot more about what's going on in Lex's home, and it shows that Lana is still protective of Clark and even more suspicious of Lex. No, it's better than the last episode. It's still not the best, so I'd give it a C+.
Same. Something I forgot to mention about the previous episode, just a little Easter egg. When Jimmy, or before Jimmy and Chloe break up, there's a moment where he shows the gift he says something about the gift she got him, and it's the classic Jimmy Olsen bow tie, and that just made me really happy. But yeah, this episode wasn't. Yeah, both these episodes weren't that great.
Yeah, I do think the next two are much better. As the next one, we get ton of character building stuff in Freak, which is actually an episode directed by Rosenbaum. And then the second one is the big wedding.
People with meteor powers are being abducted.
She's meteor infected, Clark.
You know the real reason why I was abducted, don't you? I'm some kind of meteor freak, aren't I? Please, Clark. I don't want to die. Just get it out of me.
Smallville, followed by Supernatural. All new episodes this Thursday at 8/7 Central on the new CW.
Ever since I've been with Lana, I wake up wondering, is today going to be the day when she sees who I really am?
Lana, I'm sorry, but I can't let you go through with this unless you know everything.
What would you be willing to do to make sure that Lana is standing next to you at the altar?
Anything.
And do you, Lana Lang, take Alexander Luther to be your husband in the holy state of matrimony?
So, yeah, we're getting on to some good stuff with season 6. Trying to see what else we have here. Yeah, so we're halfway through. We also have the Chloe's mom situation. We have the goofy noir episode, and then the final 2 episodes of the season are pretty good, with like the weird returning actor playing a different character.
Oh yeah, that one
where he's the predator. Yeah, so we're halfway through. We haven't gotten to the insane goofy stuff yet. I feel like that happens like halfway into season 7, where it starts getting like super. Yeah, compared to the previous episode, like Labyrinth was like a really good episode, as was Justice. These were just kind of like mostly filler, and then we have a couple more filler episodes before we get to the end of the season. Yeah, that just about does it for us this week. What have you got going on, Al?
So VGU.tv, we've got content coming more. We have more content coming soon, and there's the podcast put out by VGU, Players Club podcast, Weekend News podcast, Hypertime the podcast, and you can find them all on. You can find Hypertime on all the various podcast platforms by just searching Hypertime to podcast. And as for the other 2, just search VGU.tv podcasts. So
yeah, and check in comics, the watch party. We're watching kind of pop horror right now, and we just watched Frighteners, so check that out. And yeah, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend. We will catch you guys next time. I'm Lou Gonzalez.
And I'm Alan Muir. This podcast stands for Truth, Justice, American Way.